Welcome to Journey to Esquire, the podcast. I'm Jocelyn Hardrick, founder and president of Diversity Access Pipeline, Inc., the company behind this podcast and other great programs, like Journey to Esquire Scholarship and Leadership Program, which provides $2,000 cash scholarships to third-year law students and internships to second-year law students, along with leadership training and mentors. And Journey to Esquire, the blog, which provides insightful articles to help navigate you through law school and beyond. Find out more on our website, www.journeytoesquire.com. Hi, welcome to Journey to Esquire, the podcast. I'm Jocelyn Hardrick, your host and the founder and director of Diversity Access Pipeline, Inc., the nonprofit behind this podcast and all our great programs. I'm so excited today. We have another great guest. We're passing the mic to Shamika T. Askew of the law office of Shamika T. Askew, the private attorney with a public servant's heart. That's a great logo. So Shamika was born and raised in Michigan, and she moved to Florida because she fell in love when she came here for law school. But before she moved to Florida, she worked for a state governmental agency, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, for about 8 years. And during that time, her love for public service began. As a public servant, she served in a lot of different roles. She was reviewing contracts to determine compliance, drafting pleadings and motions, answering discovery requests, and conducting contested case hearings. And she served in a lot of different roles, like a legal policy analyst and a liaison between her department and the Michigan Department of Attorney General's office. So when she moved to Florida, she obtained contractual positions at various firms, and she handled a lot of different areas of litigation. She graduated from Tennessee State University with a bachelor's degree in business administration, and she received her JD from WMU Cooley Law School with a concentration in litigation. While she was there, she did a lot of advocacy work with the moot court and mock trial competitions. Shamika also has a passion for serving. She is a volunteer guardian ad litem, which is something that I did, so I have a heart for that as well. And when she has time and in her spare time, she mentors at-risk juvenile girls by visiting the juvenile facilities on a regular basis. She's a firm believer in work-life balance, so we want to hear about that. And she enjoys spending time with family and friends, traveling, relaxing on the beach, which is awesome, right, in Tampa Bay, and attending Love First Christian Center. Welcome, Shamika.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for the opportunity. It's really an honor to be here. I love everything you're doing. Keep up the awesome work.
Oh, thank you so much. Shamika and I first met. She had left Cooley before I started working there, but we met like at a bar association meeting, and she was telling me all about the awesome work she was doing then. I was so impressed. As a newer attorney, you were doing a lot of things that took a lot of courage and bravery. So before we get into all that, let's talk about your journey to Esquire. So what made you want to be a lawyer?
I was one of those young children that wanted everybody to follow the same rules. Growing up, I noticed at an early age, whether it be family or outside of the family dynamic, I wasn't always given the same set of rules to follow as others. And that stirred up this thing in me of like fairness and wanting everyone to comply with what I had to comply with, right? And so ultimately, my mom said, even when I was younger, I was like, very passionate in my position. I also was interested in making sure that the right things were being done. Like integrity meant something to me, just even as a young girl. So when I learned of like what a lawyer did and what the legal field entailed, I'm like, that's really what I want to do. I had a situation occur when I was probably a teenager where one of my family members had her children taken away from her. And I didn't understand it at all. I'm like, where are my cousins? Like, why aren't they with their mom? And I later learned that that was dependency law. And that was, when children are removed and things of that nature. So that was my first personal experience in the legal field. And from that moment on, I said, I want to be a lawyer. I want to make sure that children are protected. I want to make sure that children aren't removed from homes and things of that nature. So it really prompted at a very, very young age.
Oh, that's interesting, because a lot of people have the similar story. Something happened in their family and they knew that the law was involved or that a lawyer could help, and then that motivated them to do it. And of course, the that's not fair, right? As kids, we always know when and instinctively when something's not fair.
For sure.
And some of us, make a living out of it.
Yeah.
So now let's fast forward, because you said you were really young.
Mm-hmm.
What was your application process like? How did you start? Did you start in college? And how many schools did you apply to? And what was that story like?
So I am your tenacious individual that I don't give up. I do not accept no. I'm very driven and I'm very persistent. So I had a very challenging journey in starting with applying to law school. So I'm not a standardized test taker, never have been. I just freeze up when it comes to thinking of, oh my gosh, this is time. Like, it's just something about hearing that I only have so much time where I freeze up. It's not that I can't articulate the information or can't analyze it and apply it. It's just something about just having it be time just really was frightening. And so knowing that, I knew that I probably wouldn't be going to your Ivy League schools because I didn't have the LSAT scores for that. In fact, when you mentioned the application process, I had to think back to, I was denied from Cooley. And if anyone knows about Cooley, they'll accept everyone in was the reputation, but everyone doesn't graduate, right? But I wasn't accepted in, I actually was denied. And I went through their conditional program where you did, I want to say it was probably like a 6-week program or something to that effect. This was like back in 2007, I believe. And I thought I did amazing. I'm like, I'm learning, I'm getting it, I'm volunteering, I'm participating. Oh yeah, there's no way they're not gonna accept me and approve me in this conditional program, right? They denied me yet again. But being the person that I am, I don't accept no as an answer. I said, you know what? I posted those no's on my wall and I looked at them every day. And I said, one day I am going to get past this test so that way I can get accepted. And so I retook the LSAT. I don't even remember how many times I, took that thing, but I finally took it and I had a decent score where they admitted me into Cooley. And if I'm not mistaken, I probably was admitted under limited circumstances, meaning I could only take so many credit hours per semester. So that's what I did. So that was the journey in getting in.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So Cooley is an access school. As the listeners know, I'm a professor there now. So I understand all the little things you're talking about, the safeguards they put in place to make sure you don't get overwhelmed and you have the best chance to succeed. But that can be, for a lot of people, all those things you just mentioned is stopping them from even trying, right? The standardized test thing. And then we're going to talk about how you got over it, right? Because you're here and you're an attorney. So you had to take a couple of more tests before you got your license. Yeah. And some people hear no and they give up. And I'm like, no, you got to get through the no's before you get to the yes. And people like you and I who do big things and are busy and get things done, we hear a lot of no's. We celebrate the yeses, but we hear a lot of no's before we get there.
I failed my way here. And I think people need to remember that, failure is just part of the process. Some people are used to thriving on the first chance, and that's phenomenal. Like, kudos to everyone who does, but not everyone does. And you cannot let that deter you from where you're called to be. Like, I'm destined to be here. I saw this. It wasn't like, I just want to do it just to say I'm an attorney. No, I know that this is my calling, at least part of it. So I had to just stay the course. And so, so that was the application process. And then law school.
Yeah. So tell us about law school. Did you enjoy it? What were some of the activities you were part of?
I tell every person that I come in contact with that law school was amazing. I absolutely love law school. Like, I tell everybody, if I could have gone back and did it over, I would have, because that's how much I enjoyed it. I'm a student by nature, so I love learning. I love, applying new things, etc. But law school is different from any other school for me, because I hear a lot of people say I don't like reading. I'm not an avid reader either. However, law school reading is a lot different, as you know. they give you these set of facts and you get to argue your position. And that was just intriguing to me. The Socratic method and standing up in class, everyone was afraid of that, but that was like the moment where I'm like, come on, let's do this, So I will say that the journey in law school was amazing for me as far as the knowledge. However, it was difficult to process that I wouldn't be at the top of my class. It was difficult to realize that, yeah, I won't be that A and B student. I'm likely going to be that B and C student. And I'm okay with that. I had to get over that my first year, because the first year I think I got a B and a C. And that's easily like a 2.25 or 2.5 or something along those lines. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like 2.0, I'm too close to like getting kicked out. So it really worried me. But I will tell you that it's those average students that come out here and they excel, because we're not just given everything. We have to work harder. And I think when you work harder, at least in my opinion, you appreciate it more, because it wasn't just a cakewalk.
So. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. And like my TAs aren't always the student that got the top score, but they're the students who showed the most improvement, because they can show other people what to do to get better at it. If you're naturally good at something, how do you show other people to do it? You're like, just do it. And they're like, well, no, I don't get it. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I agree.
And then that's a good lesson for our listeners. That hurts a lot of people's egos. This idea that, I've always gotten A's and always been top of my class, but everyone in law school's always gotten A's and been at their top of the class.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's where I was like, oh my gosh, I've never like been in these predicaments, because I did pretty well in college. I did pretty well in high school. So to have to realize that you're going to be that B and C student, it was a lot to swallow. But after a while, it was just like, at the end of the day, I just care about that piece of paper. Just give me my diploma.
Yes, the B's and the C's.
Exactly.
Get degrees.
The student loan debt that I have,
Oh, so. Yeah. We have some resources to talk about that student loan debt, but it's definitely something, if you're pre-law, that you need to think really hard about and make some plans about how you're going to manage it when you graduate. So, now let's talk about, I mentioned some competitions. Can you explain what the mock trial and moot court competitions are for our listeners?
It's been a while. Sorry, I graduated back in 2011 and we are in 2023. So.
Oh, yeah. 12 years.
Back then, I do recall having a partner. If I recall correctly, I do remember having competitions on a civil side as well as criminal. From my recollection. And so they would give you a set of facts. They will tell you which side that you're going to be arguing for or against, right? And ultimately, it was your job to apply the law and the facts and go before either a panel of judges or one particular judge. And so, it was exciting. I knew pretty early on that litigation was what I wanted to do. I love the courtroom. It's like, I get excited. I get this adrenaline. It's almost like being back. I used to play sports, like playing basketball or doing track. It's like that same adrenaline rush that I used to get playing sports is what I get in the courtroom, and doing the mock trials and things of that nature, and as well as right now, real life. So it was a great learning experience. You get a lot of great feedback. You really get a practical sense of how these rules apply. You can take evidence all day long, right? And you can study with note cards and index cards of what hearsay is, but it's not until you get into the courtroom and you're hearing the testimony. And I will say, it is an art. It is definitely an art. Having the judge, having the witness, having your client, it's a lot of moving parts, and you have to be clear in like this, from start to finish, how it all works and how the rules apply. So I would definitely tell you that Cooley, specifically their programs, the moot court, mock trial, all of that really prepared me in being a great litigator.
That's awesome. A lot of athletes, like you were saying, love that, because it's a lot of the same skills of all these moving parts. Trying to work with a team, because you have your client as part of your team. The judge is part of your team, even though they're not in your favor. They're, everyone is in the courtroom is trying to move the case along, right? Exactly. To let everyone get access to justice, whatever that looks like for them. So I'm glad that you enjoyed that. And so that's probably a big part of why you enjoyed law school, right? If all you did was read cases all day.
Yeah, it was exciting. It
Yeah.
really was.
Yeah, that's nice. So now you're graduating from law school. And one of the things before we get to, what your job search was like, something on a lot of people's minds right now is this bar exam, right? Especially in Florida. I know those last set of bar results for February 2023 were tough on a lot of schools, even schools that are, typically do well. And you mentioned earlier the standardized test issue. So can you talk about what you did to prepare?
Okay, so preparation wise, you have your Barbary, you have your Kaplan, you have your Themis, and any other organization that's out there. I would tell you, I sat for my first bar exam in 2012, February of 2012. I had graduated Cooley in September of 2011, sat for my first bar exam in February of 2012. I will say, looking back, that 90% of my issue was mental. I had some type of roadblock that I didn't think I was capable of being a lawyer. It was almost like an imposter syndrome where it's like, I don't belong here. And then I was terrified. I'm like, if I pass this thing, people are going to be asking me for legal advice and I don't know anything to tell them yet, right? So a lot of the mental, I really believe, spilled over into my bar prep. You can sit there and be on the computer for 3 hours, which was very difficult for me, and take notes and do all of that. But if you're not mentally ready, you're wasting your time, honestly. So that was really huge for me the first go round. Now, let me share this very early out. I failed the bar exam and I had to go back because I couldn't recall how many times I had failed it because I failed it so many times. When I was in Michigan, I failed the bar exam a total of 6 times. I thought it was 5, but it's actually 6. I failed 6 times. On my 4th attempt, I failed by 1 point. That was April of 2014. So I've been doing this now for 2 years. Failed by 1 point. And I'm like, really, God? 1 point? Like, they couldn't just find a point somewhere, and slide me on through, with everybody else. So I said, you know what? The fighter in me, the persistent person that just doesn't give up, I'm gonna appeal this. So I appealed. They denied it. So ultimately, and I feel like that was my 4th time. But ultimately, when it boils down to it, I just kept failing. I kept failing over and over and over again. And I decided that I was going to relocate to Florida. I get to Florida in September of 2014, only to realize that Florida is way more difficult than Michigan for me. Because I'm a great writer, I'm not a great multiple choice taker. And I think for bar prep, you really need to know that, because ultimately that's going to help you strategize on how to perfect your strengths and how to try to maximize that to overcome your weakness, right? Mm-hmm. So I moved down to Florida. I know my area of strength is writing. In Michigan, you had 15 essays. So I did pretty well on the essays. It's just the MBE that I struggle with. So I get to Florida to hear that they have 100 multiple choice section, and then they have the MBE, and then they only have just 3 little measly essays. And I'm like, Shamika, what are you thinking? What are you doing, baby? So I said, well, I'm here now. So I sat for the first bar exam here in Florida in 2015, and it was in February of 2015. And I listened to a lot of people, and that's another tip I would give with bar prep. You got to be mindful of who's in your ear, right? Not everything that Joe Brown does is going to work for you, Sally. And not everything that, Shamika did is going to work for Sarah. So ultimately, knowing how you work in environments is very important. So for me, I listened to a lot of people saying, oh, you're going to fail the Florida section, so don't even study that. Right?
Oh, wow.
So I didn't study it. I was like, okay, you've taken it several times. I'm going to listen to, and I know it sounds crazy, but you have to remember, I'm exhausted at this point.
Yes.
I'm going in. I'm going in now. And I felt Michigan, I believe it was 5 times. The 6th time was in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's what it is. The 6th time was in Florida. So ultimately, for that first time in Florida, here I am going into the bar exam, and I'm like, okay, I didn't study for the Florida multiple choice section because I'm not going to probably do well, right? And then I studied for the essay as best as I could. And then I tried to do as many essays, because you're going to hear people tell you 1,001 things about these essays and 1,001 things about the multiple choice. Needless to say, I totally bombed the Florida bar exam the first time, right? And I also will say this, every time I sat for a bar exam, I always worked full time. I worked every single time, because in my mind, I needed that balance. Well, going in now to my 7th time in Florida, taking the bar exam. So 2nd time for Florida. So I failed 5 times in Michigan and that 1 time in Florida. So I went in February 2016 for the next bar exam. I didn't sit for the summer one because I was like, I need a break.
Yes.
My first summer in Florida, I want to enjoy the beaches. I'm not going to be mentally there. So I sat for the bar exam. This time I did not work. I did not work at all. I literally decided I didn't fail this thing 6 times working. Let's do something different because I want a different outcome. So I didn't work at all. I treated the bar exam as my full-time job. So I literally was at the library at 9 a.m., taking a lunch break, and then leaving probably around 8 or 9. I gave it everything that I had. I also got a tutor. I don't know if he's still at Cooley. Oh my gosh. I feel so bad. He was in the ARC.
A lot of people, there's been a lot of movement at Cooley, but we'll definitely give him a shout out in the show notes if you remember.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Because we're like, well, I'm captivated. We're like, even though I know how it ends, I'm like, how does it get there?
So I had him as my tutor, and he helped me with my essays. And so ultimately, I finally passed. And I attribute that to having a tutor. I also believe that not working played a difference. And I also believe Themis played a difference. Prior to that, I was using Barbary and/or Kaplan. Themis worked for me. And the reason why it worked for me is because they have shorter videos.
Yes.
So their videos are not 3 hours long where you're just sitting there like, oh my God, can you please hurry up, right? Themis is like 15 minutes in and out. So for me, I felt accomplished knowing that, yes, I knocked out this video. So ultimately, those 3 things I think are what helped. And I had to tell myself, you know what, if this 7th time is not it, I guess I'm just not meant to be a lawyer, right? So finally, I passed, and that was in April of 2016.
Wow.
So sorry, that was a long story.
No, we want to hear it.
This is 4 years of failing. And then not only that, you got people, how'd you do, baby, on the bar exam? And then you start feeling embarrassed. And then, you're trying to not be on social media because people are following you, even though they're not saying they're following you. They're watching your story and they're saying, in fact, I'm going to tell you how I know people watch. I had a young lady tell me, well, Shamika, you graduated in September of 2011 and you always taken the bar exam. So didn't you fail this many times? I'm like, oh, I guess you're right. You know my story better than I do. I had failed so many times, I wasn't keeping track. I just know that I wanted to pass. So I say that to say, all of that is going to be out there. Like, you're going to have all of these outside noises. You're going to have to zone in and say, look, this is my life. This is my journey. And my story is going to be different than someone else's. But I will tell you, I'm happy I didn't give up. You want to know why?
Why?
I needed that because of the type of law that I practice.
Family law?
My mom, yes. My mom would always tell me, Shamika, I don't know why you have to sit for this bar exam so many times, but I think that it's preparing you to be a lawyer, because you're going to get those cases where you're going to have to keep fighting for those clients. And that's what kept me grounded. And she was right. I come into contact with people who have been in the divorce process for years and they just want to get out, right? So that was the bar exam journey.
Wow. Yeah. You're the second person to share that it was 7 times. So thank you
Mm.
for being honest about that. Cause I
Oh,
try to
yeah.
have people be honest and be transparent about my journey. Cause people really don't know. You just say I took it a lot. Well, for some people, two is a lot. And
Correct.
others they're the sixth
Correct.
time and they're wondering, should I do it one more time? And
Absolutely.
like you said, if you have a vision and you see yourself being a lawyer,
Mhm.
then that vision was put in your heart for a reason.
Correct. And here's the icing on the cake. I'm now licensed in both Michigan and Florida.
Oh, look at that. Okay, now.
So I come to Florida and pass this difficult bar exam on the second try, just to guess what? Tell, and I'm very much like, give me my bar license, please. So I was reading the rules in Michigan and come to find out you can pretty much waive in, just submit an application process. So by the time I hit my 5 years, I said, here's my application, here's my money. Essentially, give me my bar license, please. And they had to.
Oh, wow. Esquire squared. That's what I like to call it. Really nice.
So yeah. So I
Yeah,
say all that to say there's a reason for the long journey, but it always ends up working out in the end.
it does. So it's this idea that the destination is not the only goal. It's who you become
Absolutely.
on your way to the destination.
Absolutely.
Oh,
So
wow. Well, I know your story is going to inspire some of our listeners because there are a lot of people who are, wondering, should they try again? They're
yes.
working, they have kids, they have so many demands. They're hearing, so I've heard people tell me some crazy things they've heard from others. And I'm like, that might have worked for that person. But like you said, you have to figure out what's going to work for you. What
Mhm.
about the timing? So one more thing about the bar exam, because you had said that timing issue was a thing for you. How did you overcome that?
Timing, what do you mean? What did I
That
say?
that you said that when a test is timed, it creates anxiety for you, and that's what was messing up your
Oh,
performance.
so I will tell you, I'm not really sure. I didn't have a roadmap of how I'm gonna overcome this. It almost came to a point where it was just like do or die, honestly. And I
Yeah.
say that because I still froze up on the first time taking the Florida bar exam. I actually fainted. I passed out.
Oh, wow.
I was sitting there and I was so anxious because your body can get so worked up from anxiety and fear where, things happen. And I
Mhm.
remember they were like, it's time to start or begin or whatever they say. Right. And then I just remember like passing out and saying to and talking to myself to say, Shamika, like snap out of this, chill out, calm down. It's going to be okay. This is not life and death. So I say that to say I had to literally work through and coach myself. I didn't hire anybody to help me. I didn't hire an anxiety coach. I didn't hire a therapist or anything of that nature. I didn't take any medication. I just had to be positive and pray
Right.
and say,
Hmm.
"Wait, I got to get through this. I didn't
Yes.
incurred a lot of debt.
Yeah.
Now, you know?
Yeah. 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 And thank you for your honesty too. I do bar coaching through the program, and I tell people, have you considered that you are actually afraid of what happens if you pass? And a few people
Oh,
have said, oh, wow,
I'm
yes,
so happy you said that. You know how you like plan of like what you're gonna say on
yes.
a show, and then like you get there and you forget. That was one of the things I was gonna say. One of the things I was gonna say when you asked me about the first time I sat for the bar exam, what I also wanted to add was that I wasn't afraid of failure because I
Hmm.
know failure very well. I was actually afraid of success.
Hmm.
I was afraid of succeeding. And to be quite honest, I still am to this very day. Like I'm afraid to get too big. Like I
Hmm.
want to be just right. Like I don't want to have a Morgan and Morgan law firm. That's not my desire. So I purposely set it up where it's like I cannot go that far. Like even with Michigan, only I posted it that I'm licensed in Michigan. I know a ton of people there, but my fear is that Michigan is going to take off, and I don't want that, right? So that is true.
Yeah.
That was true for me.
Yeah. And then my motto is feel the fear and do it anyway, right? Because that's what it sounds like got you through. You were afraid, you were scared, but you kept going. So that's a great lesson for our listeners. Now let's talk about your first job out of law school. What was your search like? That look on your face.
So because now you guys, it is taking years to get here, right?
Yes.
So graduate in 2011, take the first bar exam 2012, don't pass until April of 2016. So here we are, April of 2016. You can't convince me that I won't have a job next week, having heard that I didn't pass the bar exam. So I'm like, oh, this part is easy. Not. I submitted applications. So I'm very tenacious, right? So I literally I drove, right, to law firms in the Tampa Bay area, handing out resumes, asking us to speak to the attorney, handing out resumes saying, hey, I just want an opportunity, right? I did this before I passed and even after. And no one would give me the opportunity at all. And so I remember being in church. I was at Love Christian Center at the time. And I remember being there, and it was my voice, but I knew it wasn't me. And it was like, start your own law firm. And I'm like, what? That wasn't me, because I've never had a desire to own my own business. That was not in my vision for myself. My vision was to just become a lawyer, work for somebody, governmental agency, I didn't care who it was, work, and then become a judge, right? So I'm like, start my own law firm. Like, this can't be right. So I kept praying. And this was in October of 2016, I heard this. So finally, April to October, nothing. December 7th, my birthday, I said, you know what, screw it. What do I have to lose? I went on SunBiz, I filed the paperwork, started my own firm. That tagline was not me. The private attorney I'm not creative at all. So that's not me. That was a download that I had received. And I was like, okay, I'll go with that. And so ultimately I started it scared in December of 2016, just became a lawyer. So not really sure what to do as a lawyer, let alone a business owner, right? So one thing that I love to do is try to connect myself with people who are in the position that I want to be in. So the Florida Bar has this Lawyers Advising Lawyers program. So you can ask questions to other lawyers about any practice area. So that's what I did. Luckily, I connected with a mentor who's now a good friend, Lori Oha, and she was phenomenal in helping me with probate, right? And so I tried to do that in the practice areas that I was doing at the time, and just took it day by day. And still learning, still growing. I haven't arrived yet, but I'm definitely not where I was December 7, 2016.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. And I think probably that's maybe around when I met you, when you had just opened, because I remember you said you had your own firm, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Because, that's usually something people do after maybe 10 years practicing or a few years practicing with government. And they're like, I'm going to go out on my own. But y'all young folks, just going out on my own.
I'm not young. I'm 38, ma'am. I had no choice.
Yeah.
I had no choice. It was like, no one would give me an opportunity. I didn't work this hard to just not work. So, and let me also say this. When I started this firm, I was working at Soho Juice Company in South Howard, making $12 an hour, right? And I remember they said, you're a lawyer? Why are you working here? And it goes back to mindset. Everything starts in the mind first. At that time, I didn't have the mindset that I was worth more. I didn't have the mindset that I deserved to have a higher earning than what I was used to making. $12 an hour back in 2016 didn't sound bad to me. It's like, oh, and I'm just making juices? Okay, I'll do this. I remember doing a contract position with another law firm, and they said your hourly rate is going to be $250 an hour. And I said, that's robbery. Why are we billing that much? Those were my exact words. I didn't understand the concept, but you also have to remember where I come from. I come from poverty. I come from welfare, right? So it was hard for me to fathom charging that much. So it's
and valuing your time and expertise.
Yes. I'm still
even as a JD. Yeah, even as a JD, you have an enormous amount of value you can bring into an organization. There are not JD preferred jobs like in compliance where you don't need a license and they're paying 85,000 and up. And you're making $12 an hour in a juicing store and thinking that's okay. You're doing all right.
Because my mindset, I didn't think that I was worth anything else. And that comes from having confidence in your ability. That comes from just believing in yourself and having the work. Obviously, I believed in myself enough to get here, but that making the money part of it was like, wait, I'm supposed to make how much? No, that's too much.
Yeah. And I did a talk on the money mindset shift that we were talking about before we got on the podcast. So I'll make sure I'll link that in the show notes as well, because we're going to talk about that a little bit. So before we go into kind of your firm now and what you're doing, what advice do you have for new and future law students? You've given a lot of tips so far, but if you had like one little piece of advice.
First piece of advice is don't compare your journey to other people's journey. We as humans get in the habit of saying, man, I graduated with Shamika and Shamika's doing this. I'm only here because I decided not to give up on me. But as you can hear, my journey has been one heck of a ride, right? So comparing your journey to others, I think is a great way to set yourself up for disappointment. You can't do everything. You have to learn how to say no and understand what you are capable of doing in your season. So saying no to certain events, saying no, I can't afford this. I'm on a budget right now. That's huge. And like I said earlier, just really knowing who you are and what your strengths are. Like for me, I know I'm not a night owl, so I can't study late at night. So I have to structure my, my work. And even when I was studying for the bar exam, around the times when I know I'm more productive. Like even now as a law firm owner, I don't like working on legal stuff early in the morning. I like doing administrative business stuff early in the morning. But society teaches you sometimes that it has to be this way. And the beautiful thing of having your own is you can create whatever you like. So a lot of days, if I don't have court like today, I decided to come in for the podcast in my office and work from 12 to whenever. And then I can go home and do whatever, work or whatever I need to do. So ultimately, just knowing that you have the power to create your own reality. I'm now in a position where I don't want a traditional law firm. That's not my desire. Having law office space in Tampa, Florida, downtown, that's not appealing to me. You know what that looks like to me? A lot of money.
High cost. Yep.
A lot of overhead. That's what I see. I don't see like the best lawyers are downtown. No, I see they have a lot of overhead and they're going to charge you a lot of money to cover that overhead. I want to be 100% virtual. I was happy when the pandemic hit. I was
to a degree. Yeah. About the
yes.
virtual.
I wasn't afraid. Yes, you're right. Let me correct that. As it relates to business, right? Yes. Since then, I have not had an in-person consultation.
Yeah, a lot of people got more comfortable with the technology, which I'm happy about, because it means you're more accessible to people who may have trouble getting out of their homes, who don't have cars, who are running from work and school and other obligations. And so the commute time cuts down. So that's some great advice.
Yeah. So not only does the commute time cut down, but that means less fees that the lawyers can collect to their clients. And I'm all for, let's do what's in your best interest. Like, does this make financial sense at all? Right. Yes. And then it also increases your territory.
It does.
So, I've taken cases in Broward and things of that nature. I would not have been able to do that had we not had the pandemic.
Well, and Michigan one day.
Yeah.
It's your double barred, you might be able to make that work a lot. It's a lot more feasible, right? For people who are barred in more than one place to be able to get clients.
And I found out recently that Michigan does not require a physical office space. So when I do advertise officially, it will have a virtual office. I'm just going to use this small office that I have here in Florida, in Brandon, Florida. And that's another thing. Do not try to get something that you can't afford. And even if you can afford it, Do you really want to spend your money on things, or do you want money in your pocket to do what you really enjoy? Traveling is what I love. So I'd rather spend my money on traveling. Or like I just bought a new house, money on things like that. That's going to
bring, congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And that's with owning my own firm finally, and charging what I need to charge.
Yeah. So let's go to that, because that is what prompted me to reach out to you and say, hey girl, let's talk about your journey on the podcast. Because like I said, I met you when you had just started your law firm, and I know, that there's a lot of costs and it takes a while before you really start to turn a profit. A lot of people don't realize that you don't make the big bucks at first. The initial money you make in has to go back into the business to make it sustainable. And now you're at the point of owning your home. So you said, you came out of poverty and welfare. Sounds like you were a first generation lawyer.
Yes.
First generation law school. How about first generation college?
No, my mom went to college.
Your mom went to college. Okay. So even though you were coming out of poverty and you had this vision to be a lawyer, what do you think kind of made you either not see the obstacles right away or just continue to overcome the financial obstacles that come with it? Because first generation lawyers, that is one of the biggest things that creates an impediment to their success in law school and after law school, is that they just don't have access to resources. They have the intelligence, they're willing to put in the hard work, but we all know it's more than just those two things. Mm-hmm. There's resources, there's knowledge, and you don't have access to it if you don't have people in your family or someone you're close to who can provide that information for you. So what was kind of like your way of getting access to that information?
So for me, it goes back to connecting with people who do have the resources, right? And not just like saying, hey, like give me money, because I definitely didn't do that. I started with $500. The check I got from Soho Juice Company, around $500. I started a business account and put $500 in there and said, I have a laptop and a phone, and that's all I need. I really think it's important to surround yourself with people who are motivated, surround yourself with people who are doing what you want to do, because naturally their wherewithal will kind of rub off on you and you'll start to think differently. You'll start to operate differently. In fact, I love Lori Ohall to death. She said something at a workshop that we did together years ago where I was helping her. And she told the crowd, she said, I'm not sure how Shamika pays her bills because she's always doing everything pro bono. And, I heard what she said, and I really took it to heart, because I never thought about money. I never thought about making all this money as a lawyer. I just thought about the impact that I could make. That was my goal. I just wanted to make a difference. I didn't care about having the Lexus. I didn't care about having the $1 million home. That wasn't my mindset. My mindset was, I want to make a difference, a positive impact. So when she said that to me, it triggered something to say, you can make an impact, but you can also get paid to pay your bills as well. And what little did she know, she was actually right. I was not able to afford paying my bills because I had a husband at the time who was doing everything, right? So at the time, he's paying the bills. So I'm trying to, learn and grow as a lawyer. And truth be told, I didn't feel comfortable charging any money because I'm still new. So like, you want me to charge you and I'm still learning? I wasn't going to tell them that, but I didn't feel comfortable charging it. But looking back, it's like, Shamika, you're a lawyer. Like, this is what you do. But I didn't have that mindset then. So just surrounding yourself, connecting with people. And you don't need a lot. I think a lot of people think they need to have all of these resources, financial resources to start, and you don't. You don't.
Yeah. You have to know your value though, and then what you bring to the table. Absolutely. And package it nicely so that people will pay you what you're worth. And
like I said, I don't think I said it on here, but I was practicing out of my apartment. Mm-hmm. On some biz, you have to put your business address. It was my apartment address, right? And I said, Lord, please don't let anyone come to this address, right?
Yeah.
So the way I packaged it was, I would tell people, we come to you.
Yes.
We don't want you to drive out here and do all of this. We'll come to you. And that was only because I didn't have an office space, right? So I've come pretty far, and I have some ways to go, but I'm proud of where I've come so far. And I hope that I've encouraged someone to just keep going
Yes, you've encouraged me. So you got one person down. So tell us more about your firm. You said so far you do some probate and some family law. We know you're a
So,
guardian ad litem. What else do you do with your firm?
so I'm gonna tell you, I just had I don't want to say midlife crises, but I've been having a lot of epiphany moments where I'm trying to decide where I really want to go. Like, what is it? Where am I heading? What is it that I really want to do? So as of March of this year, March 1st, 2023, I decided that I want to scale back on family law a little bit as far as like how many cases I take. And in doing that, I increased my consultation fee. It used to be free, then it went to $100, then it went to $150, and now it's at $300. And the reason why I did that was because I decided that I wanted to vet. I'm now at a point where I want to choose quality over quantity. For so long, I was doing quantity, and having this large volume, and I was feeling overworked and a burnout, truthfully, last year in 2022. As of March, I decided to scale back with taking so many cases. I decided to get rid of probate completely. So I have not too many cases left. So I'm going to wrap those cases up and not take another probate case. I've actually already started referring those out. And actually, my goal is to increase my personal injury practice. So I do solely family law and personal injury. And so that's the goal for Michigan as well as Florida, because I envision being able to travel and work. Like today, I would have loved to have been in Paris doing this podcast and working from Paris. So that's what I see for myself. That's the goal within the next 2 years, to be 100% virtual and to be working from anywhere.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and I know a few lawyers doing that and they love it and they love posting from all the places they're working from. I know, it's awesome. And what's great about it is, that stuff is possible now. Lawyers from 20 years ago couldn't even imagine that. They didn't even have cell phones. So you have to physically be in the office to pick up the phone or to get the fax. Now people are just working from everywhere, especially if you're in a practice that doesn't require a lot of in-person hearings. That's possible. So thank you so much, Shamika, for being so transparent.
Oh, yeah,
Sharing so much of your story. We loved having you. How can people reach you and connect with you?
So I am on most social media platforms. I'm on Facebook as at Askew Law Office. That's ASKEW Law Office. I am on Instagram, same handle at Askew Law Office. I'm on TikTok. Askew Law Office. That's my favorite platform, by the way. You can learn a lot from TikTok. And if anyone who's listening, if they feel like they want a mentor, if they just want someone to encourage them, definitely reach out on my cell phone, 813-315-0057. I love mentoring and inspiring people. So, yes.
Oh, that's outstanding. So we're definitely going to have you be a mentor in the program. We're going to
Absolutely.
holler at you.
In fact, I have a nonprofit within me. It's going to be a little bit different, but when I heard about yours, I said, I love what she's doing. So I would love to be a mentor for sure.
Oh, thank you so much. And thanks so much for stopping by. So we'll see all you guys next time.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to another great episode of Journey to Esquire, the podcast. Support, share, subscribe. And for more, visit www.journeytoesquire.com.